Bonjour, hi, my name is Magali Girard. I'm the Executive Director of KICS, the Quebec Inter-University Center for Social Statistics, and welcome to our Midi-webinaire or brown bag webinar series. We are pleased today to have Laura Gibson from StatScan to do a presentation on the education and labor market longitudinal platform. So thank you for being here. We aim at KICS to have regular brown bag webinars from analysts from StatScan to introduce us to some of the data sets available in research data centers. So for you to give you a better idea of what's available and what are the research potential of using those data. So just as a reminder, this webinar is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel. Hier, nous avons eu la version française de cette présentation. La même chose, elle a été enregistrée et sera éventuellement disponible sur notre chaîne YouTube. So Laura is an analyst at the Canadian Centre for Education Statistics at StatScan. And she will be giving a presentation about 25 minutes, and we will have a Q&A section after her presentation. So please use the Q&A section to type in your questions, and then we will look at them at the end after Laura's presentation. Also Laura might use the chat section if we want to use to share some links related to the presentation. So yeah, your turn, Laura. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Magali. I will get started with my screen here. There we go. Yeah, so good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming today on your precious lunch hour. My name is Laura Gibson, and I'm an analyst at the Canadian Centre for Education Statistics at Statistics Canada. And today I've been invited to give you an overview of our education and labor market longitudinal platform, or ELMLP for short. So a good place to start is with what exactly the ELMLP is. And in fact, I actually prefer to start with what it's not. So the ELMLP is not a large integrated data set. It's actually a relational data environment. So what that means is rather than creating one record per individual with data from multiple sources, the ELMLP is made up of separate data sets that can be integrated using anonymized linkage keys. And so this setup protects the confidentiality of individuals, and it ensures that researchers have access only to the information that they need, while vastly increasing the potential uses of our data holdings. And the ELMLP is comprised mostly of administrative data sets, many of which are updated on a regular basis or a semi-regular basis, which allows for longitudinal analysis. And the way that the ELMLP is built is a reflection of how at StatCan data security is our highest priority. We use state-of-the-art tools and processes that prevent disclosure and ensure the confidentiality and privacy of individual data. And only aggregate non-confidential data are released outside of Statistics Canada. So there are 3 core files of the ELMLP that are updated on an annual basis. And so these 3 files are the PSIS, or Postsecondary Student Information System, RAISE, the Registered Apprenticeship Information System, and the T1 family file, or T1FF or TIFF. And that's a TIFF file, T1FF tax data. I'll describe these in more detail in a moment, but first I'll note that if you're at all familiar with PSIS or RAISE, you might notice that not all of the years of those data sets are available in the ELMLP. And that's because a certain level of completeness is required to construct files for longitudinal analysis, and generally the more recent years have fewer data gaps. So the first of the core files, as I mentioned, is PSIS, or the Postsecondary Student Information System. And that's available from the 2009-2010 academic year onwards. PSIS is a national administrative survey on enrollments and graduates of Canadian public post-secondary institutions. It collects information pertaining to the programs and courses offered at an institution, as well as information regarding the students themselves. And the information in PSIS is available in cross-sectional files, but within the ELMLP, certain years can be linked longitudinally. The next core file is RAISE, or the Registered Apprenticeship Information System, which is available from 2008 onwards. And the RAISE compiles data on the number of registered apprentices taking in-class and or on-the-job training in trades that are either Red Seal or non-Red Seal, and where apprenticeship training is either compulsory or voluntary. It also compiles data on the number of provincial and interprovincial certificates granted to apprentices or trade qualifiers, also known as challengers. And the third core file is the T1 family file tax data, which is available from 1992 onward. So the T1FF, or sometimes we call it TIF for short, is a source of data on income, tax credits, and deductions for individuals who have completed a T1 tax return and their dependents. The TIF that is part of the ELMLP core files is limited to the population of PSIS and RAISE. So what that means is, in order for an individual to be found in the PSIS RAISE T1FF file, they needed to be present in either the PSIS or the RAISE database for at least one reference year. And the ELMLP contains other T1FF tax files that represent other populations. For example, we have a T1FF file representing elementary and secondary students in British Columbia. And I would say the most important thing to know about the TIF is that the number of tax records in the T1FF file is not limited to the number of years an individual was in school. So all of a person's available tax records from 1992 onward would be included in that PSIS RAISE T1FF file, as long as they were found in PSIS or RAISE for at least 1 year. So to recap, we start with the 3 core files of the ELMLP, which are updated every year. And now I'll move into covering some of the supplementary data sets, as we call them in the ELMLP, which are updated on a more irregular basis, either because they're surveys with set cycles that don't occur every year, or because they come from data clients who provide updated data whenever they see fit. Before I get into those files themselves, I'll give a little bit of an overview of how those files can be integrated together. So there's 2 different ways that works in the ELMLP. The first one, which is noted here in method 1, is where you can integrate 2 different files. We'll call them file A and file B, using an anonymized ID variable that's present on both files. So in the ELMLP, that variable name is register group ID. So for example, if you wanted to integrate PSIS with the PSIS RAISE T1FF tax file, both of those files have the variable register group ID on it. So it would be possible to integrate those files without a separate key. The second method that you can use to integrate 2 files is using a concordance key file. So that's here in method 2, the example will say file A and file C. For example, PSIS, if you wanted to integrate PSIS data with census 2016 data, those 2 files have different ID variables on them. So you would need a third concordance key file that would allow you to integrate the 2 files together. So the 3 core files that I've already shared with you, the PSIS RAISE and PSIS RAISE T1FF, use method 1, and they don't need a separate concordance key file to be integrated. The supplementary files that I'll get into in a moment are a mix of method 1 and 2. So if you want to start a research project using these data in the research data centers, I would recommend that you check in with your RDC analyst to see if the files you want to integrate actually require a concordance key or not. So the first supplementary file I'll cover is the census of population. The ELMLP contains a concordance file or concordance files between PCIS and RAISE and the 2016 census, as well as several other files. I'll note that these keys are available for the long form census only, so integration is only possible for up to 25% of individuals. And the data and concordance files for census 2021 will be available in 2023. Next, we have the Longitudinal Administrative Data Bank, which is available from 1982 to 2019. This is also called or referred to as the LAD for short. And it's a longitudinal file that's designed as a research tool on income and demographics. And the value added of the LAD in the ELMLP is that it can be used to do control group or residual group analysis. So if you want to look at a control group of individuals who never pursued post-secondary education in Canada, then you could obtain their tax information through the LAD because they wouldn't be included in that PCIS RAISE T1FF file that I mentioned earlier. Although I will note that the LAD only includes a 20% sample of the population. So if you do want to look at outcomes of individuals who pursued post-secondary education or an apprenticeship, the PCIS RAISE T1FF file is always the best way to go. Next, we have the Longitudinal Immigration Database, also known as the IMDb, which is available. It has administrative immigration data for all immigrants since 1952, and then non-permanent residents since 1980. And outcomes for this population are available from tax files since 1982. Next, we have the National Graduate Survey, which is a Statistics Canada survey that collected information from persons who graduated from public post-secondary educational institutions in Canada in 2015. So there are earlier cycles of the National Graduate Survey, but only the 2015 cycle. Well, technically it's a 2018 cycle, but it interviewed individuals who graduated in 2015. And that's the only cycle that's been integrated into the ELMLP. And the questions in the National Graduate Survey focused on academic path, funding for post-secondary education, including government-sponsored student loans and transitions into the labor market. So personally, I think it's a really valuable source because it provides a lot of qualitative information that you can't get from administrative data. Next, we have the BC kindergarten to grade 12, or sometimes we call it BC K to 12 data set, which is available from the 1991-1992 school year to the 2020-2021 school year. And this data set is from the BC Ministry of Education, and it provides student level information for students who are either currently attending or have previously attended BC's public and independent schools. And the data include information about student characteristics, like gender or age, geographic location, as well as their progress through the education system. So it also includes information on graduation, foundation skills assessment, which is their provincial exams in BC, as well as exam marks, etc. And there are a few other files that are available as part of this overarching BC K to 12 data holding. So the first is the T1FF tax file for children. So tax records for those children that are actually present in that BC K to 12 administrative file. And then we also have a T1FF file for the parents of those children, where we were able to find a matching parent. So that can be really useful for measuring the effect of parental income on the pathways of children. And next we have the emergency and recovery benefits, which is a data set that is intended to cover the major income support measures that were offered to Canadians as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020 and eventually 2021. So one example is CERB, the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, which is available or was administered between March and September 2020. We also have the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, which is available from the 2003-2004 academic year to the 2015-2016 academic year. And the Canada Student Financial Assistance Program, which is formerly known as the Canada Student Loans Program, provides non-repayable and repayable student financial assistance like grants and loans to eligible students to help them access and afford post-secondary education. All provinces and territories participate in the CSFA except Quebec, which is important to note in this presentation, the Northwest Territories and Nunavut. Those provinces and territories all receive alternative payments from the Government of Canada, and then they administer their own student aid. So that's important to note if you're looking to use this data set. And the CSFA data is provided by Employment and Social Development Canada, or ESDC. We also have the Canada Education Savings Program, which is the directorate within ESDC that's responsible for administering the education savings incentives available to eligible registered education savings plan, or RESP beneficiaries. And so RESP is a savings vehicle that's used by individuals to help save for their children's post-secondary education. This data set is also provided by ESDC. We also have the Canada Apprentice Loans, which are available from 2015 to 2021. The Government of Canada offers the Canada Apprentice Loans to those registered in Red Seal apprenticeships who take block technical training. So these loans help to cover the costs of apprenticeship training, because if an apprentice needs to take this in-class portion of training, they're not able to work. And so the loans help to cover that cost, and each individual can receive up to $4,000 per technical training period, up to 5 training periods. We also have apprenticeship grants, which are available from 2007 to 2021. And these include 3 types of grants. So there's the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant, the Apprenticeship Completion Grant, and the Apprenticeship Incentive Grant for Women. And the Canada Apprentice Loan and Apprenticeship Grants datasets are also provided by ESDC. So as you can see, we have a really good partnership with ESDC to make this longitudinal platform possible. We also have the National Apprenticeship Survey, which is another Statistics Canada survey. It's a data set containing information that looks at factors affecting the completion, certification, and transition of apprentices to the labor market. So that's similar to the National Graduate Survey that I mentioned earlier in a few respects. There are previous cycles of the National Apprenticeship Survey, but only the 2015 cycle has been integrated into the ELMLP at this time. And also a very valuable resource if you're looking for more qualitative data. We also have the Employment Insurance Status Vector, or EISV, which is available from 2007 to 2018. And the EISV is an administrative data set that follows the trajectory of employment insurance claims and benefit payments from application to termination. And the last supplementary file that I'll talk about today is the Survey of Approaches to Educational Planning, and that's the 2020 cycle. So the Survey of Approaches to Educational Planning, or SAPE, is a Statistics Canada survey that gathers information from parents and guardians about the strategies that they use to prepare for their children's post-secondary education. Also their financial plans for paying for the schooling and any barriers that they are encountering when saving for higher education. And I'll note that because it's only the 2020 cycle of SAPE that's been integrated with ELMLP, and because the children in the survey are between 0 and 17 years old at the time that their parents are interviewed, the integrated use of SAPE at this time is quite limited. So I think it'll be further down the line when those children have finished high school and had a chance to pursue post-secondary education that this integration will actually be really valuable. So for a little recap, the ELMLP stands for Education in Labor Market Longitudinal Platform. The ELMLP is not a large integrated data set, but rather a relational data environment. it uses unique anonymized IDs to allow integration of data files while protecting confidentiality. There are 3 core files that are generally updated in March of each year. So that's the PSIS, RAISE, Postsecondary Student Information System, Registered Apprenticeship Information System, and then the PSIS RAISE T1 family file tax data. And then the supplementary files and concordance files are updated on an ad hoc basis. And there are a few other databases that can be integrated with ELMLP, and that's usually done on a cost recovery basis. And so just to give you a little preview of what we do with all this data at Statistics Canada, we've had 21 articles published to date, and there are 16 articles currently in development. A sample of some of these articles include the recent releases listed on the slide, which are labor market outcomes of journey persons designated as visible minorities, graduates of 2010 to 2018 receiving payments from the Canada Emergency Response Benefit or CERB program in 2020, as well as a profile of Canadian graduates at the bachelor's degree level belonging to a group designated as a visible minority. And there's actually a follow-up study to that one coming soon, which will look at their graduate outcomes. And then the other part of the ELMLP is all of the projects that are happening in the research data centers. So currently we have 90 active ELMLP projects in the research data centers. And they represent 67 different researchers from 30 different federal, provincial, and territorial government agencies and post-secondary institutions. This slide shows a screenshot of one of our data visualization tools, which is labor market outcomes for college and university graduates. And so you'll see on the slide, this looks at the median employment income of graduates from the class of 2015. And it's showing undergraduate degree graduates from Quebec. And you can see it shows the median employment income 2 years after graduation and then 5 years after graduation. It also breaks it down. There's like a comparison for different educational qualifications, and you can change the geography. You can look at it by field of study as well by toggling the bars at the top. And then there's also this data visualization tool, which is the Canadian Apprenticeship Longitudinal Indicators, which looks at continuation and completion of apprenticeship programs. So again, this is showing for Quebec. It shows, you can look at it by different trades. It shows the average time to certification in different trades, what proportion of apprentices either complete certification or are continuing or have discontinued at a given time point. I realized it might be difficult to read on this slide because I had to kind of squish it down to make it fit. But yeah, just some ideas of what we're doing with the data at StatCan. And as a last note, I thought I would share some best practices for developing a research data center project proposal. So if you are looking to start a research project with any of these data holdings in the RDC, those applications usually come to me. And there are a few guidelines that are important to follow if you're completing one of these proposals. So the first is that your project needs to include some sort of complex analysis. So that's usually some form of multivariate modeling like regression. Any projects that include just a large number of descriptive tables or like a vague description of sort of descriptive analysis, those projects are usually either rejected or they're rerouted to other types of data access and data products like a custom tabulation. You also should provide justification for each data file that you request. So if we don't know why you're interested in having access to a file or how it's going to be used, we won't be able to provide access. And the other thing to note is if you wish to request 2 files for integration, you have to request microdata from both of those files. So in this example, if you want to link PSIS with Census 2016, you would need to request access to the PSIS microdata, Census 2016 microdata, and then also the concordance key that connects the 2 files using the different IDs on each file, if applicable. So in this particular example, it does use a concordance key. but some of them don't. So just a reminder also that you can always ask your RDC analyst for help if you are not sure exactly what files you need to include. And if you're interested in more information, I would encourage you to visit the links on this slide. I'll put the first one in the chat. And it's basically a user guide. It's called ELMLP and Associated Datasets Overview document, which includes a description of all the data files that I have presented in this session. And then the second link is if you can also just find this by Googling data available at the research data centers. And then there's a search tool, and if you type ELMLP into the search tool, it'll give you a complete list of all of the ELMLP data holdings that you can access in the research data centers. Oops. So that is all for me today. Thank you so much for attending, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Laura. That was very interesting, and I know all the potential that this platform can offer. It's quite amazing. And thank you for the link. I saw that you're sharing a link on our chat. I don't see any question in the Q&A, but I have a few for you. My first, I mean, it's so rich and you can link so many different data sets. So, and you share that in one of your, well, second to last PowerPoint, a link, I guess, with more information about all the different data sets and how to link. But I was wondering if there are any resources for researcher, you know, thinking about a research project, not sure, you know, should I ask for census data or the lab, or, you know, sometimes it's, so and you've offered generously to contact you or an RDC analyst, but do you have any tools or other resources for researchers exploring this platform and thinking about submitting a project?
Yeah, so I mean, I would say our main resources are the ones that are linked on the slide. So the user guide that has like a list of all the different data sources, and then it'll include like the years that they're available and a description of like what exactly is included. In terms of like actual code books that describe what's available in the data set, those are usually only available once you've been given access. Yeah, so that's when contacting your RDC analyst or contacting one of us if you have questions can be really helpful, and then we can sort of help you sort out what exactly you need. Okay,
so once you have access to your data, you're in an RDC, you would have the code book for, you know, one time, let's say you asked for linked data between two data sets, you would have the code book for one data set and the code book for the other, and I guess with the linked variable that any, okay, good.
Yeah, so then it would be up to the researcher to actually like merge the files together.
Yeah, okay.
And then we're working on some documentation for like how to actually use those concordance key files at the moment, but it's pretty intuitive. Like if you know how in SAS or Stata or whatever your preferred program is, if you know how to like merge two data sets based on a shared ID, it's pretty straightforward. Okay,
good. My other question was, and I guess now that I understand better how it works, but about the geographic breakdown and how small can you go? I guess it depends on what data sets you're requesting, right? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so if you're using any MLP data in the research data centers, you have to basically adhere to what we call the vetting rules, and those rules basically set certain minimum cell counts for like different geographies. And so that's something where you would work with your RDC analyst to ensure that the data that you're producing passes those vetting rules and protects the confidentiality.
Yeah. And one last question about the data available for, you mentioned provincial data from BC available from, you know, kindergarten to grade 12. Any discussions about having, similar data, but for other provinces. I know that Quebec is always outside, but other provinces that discussions with other provinces to include the similar kind of data from primary and secondary school.
Yeah, so there are no other information available at the primary school level, but there is some information that's coming up from Ontario. So there's an Ontario grade 9 to 12 data set that we are working on making available, as well as actually, I think that's the only one we have for the moment. So that one's a bit different in that it only looks at grades 9 to 12, and it's only for specific cohorts. The BC K to 12 one is more comprehensive in that it has the elementary students, and then it also goes back about 30 years. So
yeah. Still.
So we would love to have more K to 12 data holdings.
Yeah. To be able to do provincial comparisons. Yeah. Okay, thank you. I don't see any other questions or, but thank you so much for your presentation. I think it's a very valuable platform, offers lots of potential for research, yeah, thank you so much for being here.
Great, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Donc, merci à tout le monde. Thank you everybody for joining. And again, we will, this being recorded, will be made available on our YouTube channel soon. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a good day.